Hello friends. Listen to the story, it's funny, but true. Subscribe, it's easy and thank you. The story. Sarah's search for herself. Mike and Sarah had a seemingly perfect life. Living in a nice suburban neighborhood in America, they had everything. 2 wonderful kids in their teens, a beautiful home, great friends, and a marriage that had lasted over a decade. Mike at 48 was an easygoing man with a sharp sense of humor. He was content with life, happy to be with his family and spend weekends on the porch, barbecuing and watching football. But for Sarah, something felt wrong. She was 38 and couldn't shake the feeling that life was slipping by. It all started after she attended a women's self-help seminar, followed by reading a few too many books on self-growth and finding your true purpose. Suddenly, Sarah felt an overwhelming need to change something, anything, but she couldn't figure out what. At first, she thought maybe it was Mike. He was solid, predictable, never really changing. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe she needed more excitement, more adventure. One evening, after reading her latest self-help book, she turned to Mike. "Do you ever feel like we're not growing?" she asked. Mike, half watching a football game, raised an eyebrow. "Growing? Like what? Vegetables?" He laughed, hoping it was a joke, but Sarah wasn't laughing. "No, I mean as people. Do you ever feel like we're stuck in a rut? Like we're just existing, without really living *." She waved her arms in the air dramatically. Mike looked at her for a moment. "Well, I thought we were doing okay. The kids are doing great, we've got friends, our health, and I just grilled the best steaks last weekend. That's living, right?" Sarah shook her head in frustration. "You don't get it, Mike. I want more. More meaning, more depth, more growth." So she began searching for that elusive more. She threw herself into yoga, then meditation, then online courses on everything from psychology to manifestation. She started attending retreats, doing marathon runs, and signing up for various life coaching workshops. She even started talking about energy healing. Mike, bewildered, tried to keep up. One evening, Mike came home to find Sarah upside down in the living room, balancing on her hands, attempting to center her chakras. Sarah? You good there?" Mike asked, a little amused. "Sha, I'm finding balance," she replied, her voice strained from the awkward position. "Looks like you're finding a reason to visit the chiropractor," Mike muttered under his breath, heading to the kitchen. Despite his jokes, Mike was beginning to feel the distance between them. Sarah was chasing something he couldn't quite grasp. At first, it seemed harmless, but as the months passed, she grew more distant. Their conversations were no longer about their lives, the kids, or shared memories. Instead, Sarah would go on and on about the latest guru she was following or how they needed to cleanse the house's energy. Eventually, she suggested they see a therapist. Mike reluctantly agreed, even though he felt like things were fine on his end. After a few sessions, he started noticing the therapist seemed more focused on Sarah's newfound spiritual journey than their relationship. But he stayed patient, supportive, and hopeful. Until one day, Mike came home from work to find Sarah sitting at the kitchen table, her face serious. "I need to talk to you," she said. "I've been thinking about us, a lot, and I think I need something different." Mike's heart sank. He had been feeling it for a while, but hearing it out loud was a whole different experience. "You want a divorce?" he asked bluntly. No, not yet," Sarah hesitated. "But I've met someone, and he understands the journey I'm on." Mike sat down across from her. "So this is it. All the yoga, the therapy, the books, it was leading to this." Sarah looked away, her eyes filled with tears. "It's not about him, Mike. It's about me. I need to find out who I am." Mike was silent for a long moment, processing her words. "And what about us? Our family? The life we built?" "I don't know. I'm confused," she said, wiping her tears. "I just need time." Mike looked at her, and for the first time in months, he felt more exhausted than hurt. "You've already decided, haven't you?" he asked. Sarah couldn't meet his eyes. "I think so." In that moment, Mike realized something important. He had been losing her for a long time, and now she was already gone. The woman he married had slowly been replaced by someone else, someone who was searching for something she couldn't even name. "I'll let you go," Mike said, almost calmly. "But don't think for a second that I'm the one who gave up." A few days later, Sarah packed her things and moved in with a friend, though Mike had his suspicions it was someone else. He threw himself into work, spent more time with the kids, and even went to therapy for himself. It was hard to accept, But eventually, he began to move on. He stopped checking his phone for texts from her and started spending more time with people who made him laugh. It wasn't easy, but bit by bit, Mike learned to let go. One afternoon, months later, Mike received a message from Sarah. "I'm sorry for everything. I was wrong. I hope you're doing okay." Mike stared at the message for a long time before putting down the phone. There was nothing left to say. Comments. Emily J. "Oh wow, I felt that. Sometimes people just grow apart, even when we don't want them to. Mike did the right thing by letting her go." John P. "I've seen this happen to my best friend. His wife started getting into all this spiritual stuff and drifted away. It's hard, but you got to move on." Megan H. "Sarah probably thought she was finding herself, but sometimes we just run away from what's real. Mike deserves better." Dan T. "Love the humor in the story, especially the MRI part, but seriously, it's so relatable. People lose themselves in these self-help things and forget what they already have." Story update. After Sarah moved out, Mike had his ups and downs. Initially, he hoped that her departure would be temporary, that she would realize what she had left behind and come back to him and their family. He stayed in touch for the sake of the kids, but conversations with Sarah were short and distant. She was still exploring her journey, and now spent more time with her new group of friends, who were deep into holistic practices and energy healing. Mike couldn't help but roll his eyes whenever the kids mentioned Sarah's latest escapades, like the time she went on a silent meditation retreat for 2 weeks. But then something unexpected happened. One night, Sarah showed up at Mike's door, looking disheveled and confused. She had ended things with the person she left him for, realizing that her search for meaning had led her into even more chaos. She asked if they could talk. Mike invited her in, though his heart felt heavy. They sat at the same kitchen table where she had once told him about needing something different. "I made a mistake," Sarah admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I was finding myself, but I lost everything important in the process." Mike listened quietly, his emotions a mix of anger, sadness, and sympathy. He loved her once, deeply, but after months of healing and therapy, he had begun to accept that their marriage might never be what it once was. "I've changed, Sarah," Mike finally said. "I'm not sure we can go back to how things were." Sarah nodded. She understood, but she had hoped for more. Mike knew this was his moment of closure. He had fought so hard for their marriage and for her to come back to reality, but now it was clear that their paths had diverged too much. "Maybe we're both better off starting over, separately," Mike said softly. With that, they agreed to move forward with their divorce amicably. There were no harsh words, no dramatic goodbye. Just two people who had loved each other once but now needed to let go. New comments. Alex W. "Wow, this hit hard. Sometimes it's better to let someone go, even if it hurts." Mike showed real maturity in handling this situation. Jenna S. "I'm glad Mike found closure. Sarah seemed lost from the beginning. You can't keep chasing happiness if you don't know what you're running from." Chris L. "This story is so real. People get caught up in trying to find themselves and forget what's right in front of them. Mike deserves a fresh start."